Welcome to Horror Year, where every story is a journey into the unknown. If you're brave enough to face your darkest fears and uncover the most chilling tales, you've come to the right place. So, dim the lights, turn up the volume, and subscribe to Horror Year. Your journey into terror begins now. An old spooky hospital with a dark past resided in the abandoned hamlet of Willowbrook. Whispers of restless souls reverberated down its dark hallways, and the air inside was always thick. Experienced physician Dr. Martin had heard the terrifying stories but had never thought ghosts existed, until that fateful night. Dr. Martin ended up doing the graveyard shift one chilly, moonless night. As he went around the hospital checking on patients, there was a foreboding silence. He got an enigmatic note telling him to get necessary items from the basement just before midnight. He reluctantly headed for the old elevator. When its metal doors cracked open, a patient stood still within. Dr. Martin smiled politely, thinking it strange that she hadn't chosen a floor. He pushed the button for the basement, ignoring the unpleasant feeling. The descent was sluggish, and the flickering lights created unsettling shadows on the walls. The patient continued to look straight ahead while remaining mute. The cold that was running down Dr. Martin's spine persisted. The elevator finally arrived at the bottom level. Dr. Martin was shocked to see a rumpled guy stumbling into the elevator as the doors opened. In a moment of panic, he pressed the button to shut the doors, abandoning the man. "You did that, but why?" With a hint of irritation in her voice, the patient stated, "He was attempting to use the lift." Dr. Martin was surprised by what she said. "Have you noticed his wrist? It was red." His voice was shaking as he stuttered. "He died last night. I would know because I did his surgery." The woman carefully raised her wrist, exposing a rich red color. He saw the all-too-familiar scar, and his heart began to beat more rapidly. The man he had operated on the previous evening had the same one. "Like this one?" she inquired in a hauntingly lovely voice. Dr. Martin's head whirled in shock. In a whisper, he said, "You should be dead." The woman's eyes glinted with unearthly malice as her smile grew. "I ought to be, shouldn't I?" she whispered. "But even death cannot claim some things." Dr. Martin fled due to frayed nerves. He quickly collected the items, but he paused as he made his way back to the elevator, thinking about the stairs. But he couldn't bear the idea of seeing that unsettling patient again, so fear pushed him back inside the metal box. The elevator rose, floor after floor, seeming to go on forever. His thoughts were filled with fear and questions. Was she a spirit? A spirit of vengeance? He found it difficult to reason with himself, but the ominous facts dispelled his doubts. His legs shook as he staggered out when the lift doors eventually opened. When he told a nurse about his experience, she wrote it off as the whims of a weary brain. But he couldn't sleep for the next few nights. He always saw the woman's scarlet wrist, her evil smile, and her ghostly face when he closed his eyes. His condition quickly worsened as the days stretched into weeks. His bloodshot eyes had dark circles under them, and his hands were shaking uncontrollably. Dr. Martin was haunted by the experience, and his doubts were being dispelled. He searched the hospital's archives in desperation and discovered a faded newspaper item from several decades ago. According to the report, a patient named Lily passed away inexplicably following a poorly performed surgery. Who was the surgeon at fault? In a past life, none other than Dr. Martin himself. He was overcome with fear and shame as he recognized that the patient in the elevator was actually Lily's vengeful soul, seeking revenge for her premature passing. As Lily's presence followed him everywhere, the doctor's sanity began to fail. The hospital was completely dark when the electricity went out one rainy night while it was pouring rain outside. He could feel Lily getting closer, trying to claim him the way he had once claimed her, and his desperate breaths blended with the screaming wind. Dr. Martin felt the frost creep in as he clutched a scalpel, his final line of protection. He was aware of Lily's presence when a whisper touched his ear. He slashed at the empty air in a desperate attempt to fend off the spirit. However, His efforts were in vain. A burning pain in his wrist was followed by a chilly laugh that reverberated all around him. He grabbed his bleeding, now crimson-stained wrist as the scalpel dropped from his hand. Lily had gotten her retribution. The blackness engulfed him as he lay, struggling to breathe. He was completely engulfed by the hospital, which was now an unending tomb. The town of Willowbrook would always be plagued by the vengeful spirit of Lily and the legend of Dr. Martin. There were rumors of frigid winds stroking their skin, of evil spirits prowling the hospital corridors, and of a spectral person with a scarlet wrist. The terrifying story of horror and retaliation was passed down, scaring everyone who dared to hear it and serving as a sobering reminder that certain wrongs are never truly forgiven. And that brings us to the end of today's delightful story. I really hope it had you on the edge of your seat. If you liked this story, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button. It means a lot to me. And if you're new around here, feel free to subscribe. There's always an exciting surprise waiting just around the corner and you won't want to miss it. Do you have a spooky story to share or a fun idea for our next tale? Feel free to share in the comments below. I'm really curious to know what gives you the creeps the most. And as always, take care, keep exploring. And remember, sometimes the most chilling tales are the ones left untold. Catch you in the next one, if you're up for it.